Hi. So we're going to read another article, something else in cluster one. We had read the short story, The Good Samaritan, and Samaritan being someone who helps someone else even when there's nothing in it for them. It doesn't help that person out to be helping someone else. With The Good Samaritan, we had Ray, who stopped and helped a man who, not just someone he didn't know, it was someone that he did know, who was cruel to him, lied to him, but he helped him anyway because it was the right thing to do. Now we're going to read another article about helping. This article is called The World is in Their Hands. And it is an article. The other one was a short story, but this is a news article. So let me go back a page to look at, there are certain things that we need to keep in mind as we're reading a newspaper article as opposed to a short story. And if you've read the newspaper, there are a lot of pictures in the newspaper, and not just pictures, but also charts. You can see some math in your newspaper articles with the graphs and other things that they will add to it. So in here, you need to use all of that to help you understand the story. When you're looking at a picture, what do they write underneath the picture? That's called the caption. So captions give you an idea of what the picture's about, and the pictures help you understand what the story is about, or the article, excuse me. So newspaper articles often use a combination of words and graphics to get the message across. Pictures, captions, graphs, different things. Charts and other graphics can provide additional useful information, and they can also restate or summarize what is in the text. So you get a lot of information about the same thing. What's very important with a newspaper article is you get facts. You get real figures and information. There can be opinion, but that would come across as a quote, or sometimes an article is clearly identified, an editorial or opinion piece, so you know that a person's sharing their thinking with you. But otherwise, a newspaper article just talks about, this is something that happened, and here's the information about it. So in this particular article, they're going to be using a bar graph to explain information. And this gives details to support. So in here, they're asking how many teens volunteer. So how many teenagers do something for free to help out? And they're comparing it against adults. So you can see here very clearly, only 29% of the adults that they were getting information from help out, 29% out of 100 of those that they asked, whereas 55%, so 55 out of 100 of the teenagers that they would have asked said that they give their time for free. So reading nonfiction is very different from reading a short story. And depending upon your purpose or reason for reading, you may need to read slowly to understand. It is generally more difficult to understand nonfiction, as you've seen in your textbooks. So read a little bit slowly, reread, and use all of those things around to help you understand the graphs and everything else. Just like you did before, you've got a reason for reading. So look for clues around the text, the titles, the headings, the captions, the pictures, to give you information about what you're reading about. Just like when I ask you to listen to a conversation and then answer questions about it, if you can look at what those questions are first, it gives you a little bit of an idea of what the conversation will be about. So there's also a way to help add to your learning by using a chart, 5 W's, how. The 5 W's, who, what, where, when, why, how. Being able to answer those questions. And if you do Cornell notes in some of your classes, these will be strategies. Each of those questions gives a very specific bit of information about your story. So let's take a look at the story, The World is in Their Hands. So it's a newspaper article. So in trying to connect fiction with nonfiction, in The Good Samaritan, Ray must decide whether to help a neighbor. What makes people choose to help others? And this is by Eric File. And here we've got our picture, someone helping along. And again, we've got vocabulary at the bottom and additional vocabulary to help you out. So you've got the name of the article, The World is in Their Hands, and you've got here a subheading, Changing the World. So it's already giving you an idea. Why do people help out for free? They want to change things. So that's one way they can do it, by being active. With sincere apologies to the old song, the children are not the future. They are the present. They're not going to lead the way one day. They're leading it right now. Youth activism levels are at all-time highs. Nearly 3/4 of young adults say they have donated money, clothes, or food to a community or church organization over the past few years. They get involved at national and local levels, and their numbers are growing. Doing good, not gaining recognition, is their motivation. So, what is the main idea of this paragraph? Something to help is looking at what are the words that are in bold letters. Youth activism. So getting active, being involved. They've donated. So for free, they're doing things. Get involved, being active. It's not about gaining recognition. Not to be recognized for doing it. Oh, good job. No. That's not why. It's to help change the world, to make it a better place. That's their motivation. So let's take a look at this picture in the caption. A volunteer helps out at an event for youth with special needs. So special needs, we've got a wheelchair here. So physical disabilities, way to help out. We've seen a huge demand from young people who want their voices to be heard and who feel they've got something to contribute to society, says Youth Service America President and CEO Steve Culbertson. And they're not going to wait until they grow up to do it. Clearly. Obviously. Millions of youth volunteers will be out in force again this year. From 5-year-olds visiting and decorating senior citizens' homes to high school kids tutoring peers. Now, those of you that were at Rio last year, did you go to some of that after-school tutoring in the library or somewhere else? Did you have other students who were helping you out with your learning? They were volunteering their time. Your peers are the people in the same age group or community with you. Distributing HIV/AIDS educational materials, cleaning up the environment, registering voters. That's something that's very active now. It's an election year. The list of projects is almost as limitless as the enthusiasm and energy of the people engaged in them. And here we have a quick look at teen volunteerism. We have a pie chart and 2 different bar charts. So we've got a couple of different questions. Again, thinking of those 5 W's and how: why, where, how. 3 different questions about teen volunteerism. Why do teens volunteer? A couple of different reasons here. They were asked to. It feels good, makes them happy to do it. It makes a difference. And that goes back to the theme of the article. They're changing the world. It helps their resume. If you're applying to college, they like to see that you've done some activities other than just stayed and studied, that you're helping others. It's a school requirement, and that is true for some. There would be senior projects, or if you're in a course like Civitas at Rio, you will be doing some community volunteer work. And there are other reasons for doing it. How many teens volunteer? And we had already seen this in the introduction. 55% of teens volunteer. So, more than 1 out of every 2 teenagers volunteers to help others. And where do they volunteer? Primarily in their religious organizations. So at your mosque, church, or temple, someone is helping out. They help out with school groups and leadership groups. So they might be part of a different club like Civitas that is helping to do something like that. So here they're reminding you, looking at the text features to help you understand teen volunteerism. So young people are making a difference in their communities. And here we've got someone who's painting a mural to celebrate Youth Service Day. Sacramento has an annual mural affair. I think it's on right now in September. So they were painting some murals downtown. You'll have to look for them. These volunteers also learn such life skills as planning events, raising funds, making money for the group, and holding leadership roles and responsibilities. Young people have gotten sort of a negative rap. They've got kind of a bad reputation, when the majority of young people really are involved in their communities in very positive ways, says Carl Nelson. His company, State Farm, was the presenting sponsor of National Youth Service Day. So presenting sponsor, they helped provide the money and the opportunity for this to go on back in 2005. A celebration of community service and service learning that goes on year-round. So there are always ways to help. Right now with COVID and us being stuck in our homes so much, there's not as much opportunity to volunteer, but definitely there still are ways to help. Today's youth are building a unique background in altruism. Altruism, caring about the well-being of others. And they're not going to leave their service history behind them when they enter the workforce. We know that the one key predictor to lifetime service is whether you did it as a child, Culbertson states. There is a whole generation of young people that have grown up giving back and making it a fundamental part of their lives. And it's not something you give up. So let's go back a page to look at this down here. So to summarize, so if you had to explain to somebody else what you'd learned so far in this article, how would you do that? On these 3 pages, what is the most important point that the author makes about young volunteers in the United States today? And there can be more than one answer. It depends upon what you go back to in the text. Depends on what you go back to show. I believe this because here it says this. So it's not something they're going to give up. Not when they are so engaged, so passionate. Not when events like NYSD show them National Youth Service Day, show them that there is a diverse group of peers striving for a common goal, a better world for everyone. So there's a group of very different individuals working toward this. They're the most tolerant generation we've ever seen in history, Culbertson says. They can't imagine that somebody should be left out of society simply because they're Black or they're gay. I'm just going by colors. They're Black or they're gay or they have a disability or they come from an ethnic background that's unusual. They just don't look at those differences as anything more than just a part of what it means to be human. They don't let those differences get in the way of progress. And that's what makes this the greatest generation I think we've ever seen in this country. And nobody knows it. They do now. So coming back to another insert here. Volunteer work by the numbers. So here they're giving different figures about this. And it says here, interpret the data. So what meaning do you put into these facts? How do the numbers in this boxed feature, how do they support the main ideas of this article? And here we've got a library volunteer who keeps his audience's attention. I loved reading aloud to my elementary school students. Teenagers volunteer 2.4 billion hours annually, 2.4 billion hours a year. And that's worth $34.3 billion to the U.S. economy because they are doing these things for free. They're not asking to be paid for it. 82.6% of incoming college freshmen did volunteer work, compared to only 66% in 1989. So it looks like it's becoming a trend. It's becoming very natural to volunteer and help others out. The number of high school students involved in service learning increased 3,633% in the past decade. So it went from 81,000 to almost 3 million. It increased a lot. So to respond to all of this, recall and interpret, remember and give it meaning. According to Steve Cuthbertson, why are more young people volunteering? Why? What do you find in the story that tells you what he thought was the reason why? So you're going to look back at the things that he said, and then you'll also look at the graphics to see if that supports what he's saying. The facts in those graphs. Does it support what he's saying? And what does the graph on page 30 about the percentage of volunteers in the teen generation? Oh, what does it say about? Yeah, so when you're looking at that graphic, 55% of teenagers, but only 30-something of adults, or not even 30, it was 29, I think. What does that say about teenagers compared to adults? And which graphic gave you the most useful information here? Why do you think? And when it's compare your choice with the partners, that's something that we're going to do in the flip grid. So if you kept the chart that you began, did you find the answers to the questions that you'd made? Okay. And so more that we're going to do with the flip grid. Steve Culbertson says that today's youth are the greatest generation I think we've ever seen in this country. So what are two examples of that he gave that support, what are two examples in that article? It doesn't have to be what he said, but what are some examples in there that agree with what he's saying, that today's teenagers are the greatest generation? Okay, that's what you're going to be answering in your flip grid, and the rest you can put down on paper, and you'll be showing that in a further flip grid response lesson. Sorry. Okay, thanks for watching.